Hi, I'm Sam, and this week on Dungeon Brews we are talking constructs, because Horizon Forbidden West is out, but also you've probably been sleeping on the best group of creatures in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for a little bit too long. If you haven't already met them, constructs are mechanical machinations which have been ensorcelled or artificed into life and animation. They are finicky little freaks, but they are also all around brilliant. Now, there's a few characteristics which are shared between all constructs. The most well-known of them, and one which is memed far too much, is the fact that they are immune to poison, something which makes anyone who has created or conjured a build around poisoning things a little bit upset. But on top of that, they are also immune to conventional healing and a brilliant way of filling out the roster of bad guys and NPCs that your players might encounter in a steampunk or sci-fi adventure. Most importantly though, they are a brilliant base to use when you are bringing in robotic monsters from any of your favourite media. And this week we're going to be quickly brewing up a Thunderjaw from Horizon using constructs as a base. So, on top of that, what else do we need in order to make a convincing and threatening Thunderjaw? Well, conveniently in 5th edition, we've already had a T-Rex published, and when you look at a Thunderjaw, it's effectively a T-Rex with more guns and fewer arms. If we dig into the game files, there is also a really convenient overlap between the T-Rex in Dungeons & Dragons and the Thunderjaw in Horizon. That being that in both cases they have a bite attack and a tail attack. The only major differences, other than the addition of armaments and firearms, which we'll get to in a moment, is the fact that the Thunderjaw also comes equipped with radar, and that can be easily reflected by just increasing the wisdom score of the T-Rex and also just increasing its perception and its passive perception. What we want is a T-Rex which, regardless of whether or not it can actually see the prey that it's stalking, it can still find them. And then it's also covered in armor, so we just increase its AC. I'm also going to increase the number of hit die it has to be in line with some of the other challenge rating 8 constructs. On top of that, what makes a Thunderjaw more immediately lethal than a plain old dinosaur is its armaments. Thunderjaws are armed with 3 things. The first is a projectile launcher which fires explosive discs, the second are head-mounted cannons, and the third are lasers. So we reflect this in the stat block, and we're just going to give it 3 more actions. These are all ranged attacks and will facilitate increased versatility for this creature, effectively allowing it to engage both in melee combat and at range. The disc launcher fires an explosive capable of knocking down players. The second is these head-mounted cannons, and to emulate the fact that these can attack quickly, we also give this creature the action multi-attack, wherein it can attack 2 individual targets using these head-mounted cannons. And the final action is actually going to be a legendary reaction. The easiest way to increase the actual challenge of a creature is to provide it actions which it can take outside of its turn. Action economy in D&D ruins exciting combat. So legendary action, something that it can take as a reaction to taking damage, in this case laser sweep, which is the Thunderjaw's most lethal attack in Horizon, just increases threat that little bit more and also incentivizes players to take on this creature from range, which actually is where it's most effective when you look at those 2 other actions we've just added. To make the Thunderjaw more than just a T-Rex, which we've reskinned as a construct and boosted its stats a little bit, we need to rip from Horizon's best feature, and that is allowing dismemberment and letting players turn the beast's weaponry against itself. Really easy way to do this, we bring in a simple dismemberment homebrew rule, allowing players to target specific parts of creatures. In this case, the tail, the disc launchers, the head-mounted cannons, and the radars. In order to disincentivize players from doing this, what we're going to do is give the creature resistance to all kinds of physical damage except slashing for these 4 parts. But when the damage dealt to one of these individual parts totals 1/3 of the creature's entire health, which is 50 points in this case, what will happen is that part is removed. In the case of the tail or the radar, what that does is it just removes the action in the case of the tail versus the tail sweep, and in the case of the radar, it's just going to remove that passive perception bonus. Now, in the case of the disc launcher and the head-mounted cannons, what's going to happen is that construct will fall onto the floor, and a player, as an action on their turn, can pick up that weapon down and use it one time to take an attack action against the Thunderjaw or any other creature in their vicinity. And this attack action is going to use the exact actions which we've got in our Thunderjaw stat block. So either Cannon Burst or Disc Launcher. As mentioned, this is a one-time use. You can allow your players to pick these up at the end of combat, take them into the next combat, or you can have them power down after a certain amount of time to balance the fact that your players might be able to just gather these up and then murder hobo their way around the Forgotten Realms. But in short, that is how you pull one of Horizon Zero Dawn's creatures into your 5e game with pre-existing creatures and creature types and some attacks which we've pulled straight out of the game file. Enjoy putting your players through hell, and I will see you next week to share more homebrew based on my favourite TV shows, video games and films.